Why is this 2,000 years old shipwreck so well preserved? It's midnight on September 16, 2015. 60 kilometers off the Belgrade coast and 2 kilometers beneath the Black Sea surface, a remote operated vehicle surveys the seabed, transmitting videos to researchers about as it goes. Suddenly, it discerns another ghost vessel in the gloom, but this is a relic from an age. It's undoubtedly ancient shipwreck, but its mast, rowing benches, and some of the upper deck remained eerily intact. It might be an ancient Roman ship, but its appearance doesn't quite match. Notably, its displayed rudder blades more closely resemble those beacons in the even older Greek beaks. To get a definite answer, the research team took these 3 samples from the wreck and radiocarbon dating confirms its origins. The ship is dated to between 350 and 401 BCE. It is in fact the oldest shipwreck ever found. This ancient shipwreck vessel traversed the Black Sea's coast during the time of Aristotle, and has since rested its depth, unseen and distances for almost 2,500 years. This was just one of the 60 shipwrecks research team discovers at the bottom of the Black Sea between 2015 and 2017. Others date from Roman, Byzantine, and Ottoman empires, and despite the century, they also survive in remarkable condition. So why does the Black Sea contain so many well-preserved shipwrecks? In previous time, the lands around the Black Sea hosted early human settlement. Eventually, it became a harbor, trees, battery, and empire building. Because of these strategic positions, because through Western civilizations. For thousands of years, it was traversed by merchants, pirates, and warriors. And with the sustained civil activity came inevitable losses. But unlike other bodies of water in the basin, the Black Sea is a particularly deep, semi-enclosed space. Seasonal changes usually cause later with a condensed body of water to next together oxygenating water. But because the Black Sea is fed with fresh water from European rivers, also water from the Mediterranean Sea, it contains 2 distinct layers. The denser salt water flows beneath the fresh water, where it remains permanently, making the Black Sea the world's largest meteoritic or unmixing basin. Oxygen that reaches lower salty zone, which creates ideal environments for preservation, and is why the Black Sea has been called the world's biggest pickle jar. In other bodies of water, marine organisms decompose materials over time. Had its ancestral ships sunk in the Mediterranean, for example, there would like to be no organic material left today. But in the depth of the Black Sea, only anaerobic bacteria, those that don't require oxygen, can survive. This is why ancient ships can still be found carrying the original cargo, with carving in their wood they are regularly still assembled. Among the recent findings was medieval Italian merchant ships like the around the time literally have a virtual monopoly over the Black Sea trade. Venetian traveler Marco Polo would have probably been familiar with this kind of ship. Although a vessel like this one helped to modernize Europe, contemporary scholarship has never before seen such a complex example, and it was largely intact. A ship's boat still lying on its back, even though some 7 centuries has passed. Many of the 16 ships that were certainly uncovered have retained their original forms. But why there are far fewer devastating species at play in a Black Sea depth? Anaerobic bacteria do gradually weaken organic materials. When the researchers left the plank for ancient Greek rock for dating, they broke under its own weight. While the ships are exceptionally well preserved, they are also fragile. This makes it impossible to bring them to the surface intact. Scientists may carefully remove and study select objects from the wreckage, but the sunken ships will remain protected where they are, perhaps among the thousands of others. Give this us suspended time at the bottom of the Black Sea. One more with the slow version. It's midnight on September 16, 2017. 60 kilometers off the Bulgarian coast, and 2 kilometers beneath the Black Sea's surface. A remotely operated vehicle surveys the seabed, transmitting videos to researchers about as it goes. Suddenly, it discerned another ghost vessel in the balloon, but this is relative for another age. It's undoubtedly ancient shipwrecks, but its math, rowing benches, and some of its upper deck remain eerily intact. It might be the ancient Roman ship, but its appearance doesn't quite match. Notably, its displayed rotary blade more closely resembles those that speak on the even older Greek vase. Together to Bennett's answer, the research team takes 3 samples from the wreck, and radiocarbon dating confirms its ancient origins. The ship is dated to between 350 and 410 BCE. It is, in fact, the oldest intact shipwrecks ever found. This ancient big vessel traversed the Black Sea's coast during the time of Aristotle. It has since rested in its depth, unseen and undisturbed, for almost 2,500 years. This was just one of the 65 shipwrecks a research team discovered at the bottom of the Black Sea between 2015 and 2017. Others say from the Roman, Byzantine, and Ottoman empires, and despite this entry, they all survive in remarkable condition. So why does Black Sea contain so many well-preserved shipwrecks? In prehistoric times, the land surrounding the Black Sea hosted early human settlements. Eventually, it became hub for trade, battle, and empire building because of its strategic position between Eastern and Western Eurasian civilizations. For thousands of years, it was traversed by merchants, pirates, and warriors. And with sustained seafaring activity came inevitable losses. But unlike other bodies of water in the region, the Black Sea is a particularly deep, semi-enclosed basin. Seasonal changes usually cause a bladder within a contained body of the water to mix together, oxygenating the water. But because the Black Sea is fed with fresh water from European rivers and salt water from the Mediterranean Sea, it contained 2 distinct layers. The denser salt water flows beneath the fresh water, where it remains permanently, making the Black Sea the world's largest meromictic or unmixing basin. Oxygen doesn't reach its lower saltier zone, which creates ideal environments for preservation, and it's why the Black Sea has been called the world's biggest pickle jar. In other bodies of water, marine organisms decompose materials over time. Had its ancient cruise ships sunk in the Mediterranean, for example, there would likely be no organic material left today. But in the depth of the Black Sea, only anaerobic bacteria, those that require oxygen, can survive. This is why ancient ships can still be found carrying their original cargo with carving in their wood and their regular skill assembled. Among the recent findings was a medieval Italian merchant ship, likely around the time Italy had a virtual monopoly over Black Sea trade. Venice traveler Marco Polo would have probably been familiar with this kind of ship. Although vessels like this won't have to monopolize Europe, contemporary scholars has never before seen such a complex example, and it was largely intact. A ship's boat still lying on its deck, even though some 7 centuries have passed. Many of the 65 ships that were recently uncovered have retained their original forms. But while there are far fewer degradative forces at play in the Black Sea's depth, anaerobic bacteria do gradually weaken organic materials. When researchers left the plant from the ancient screw wreck for dating, It broke under its own weight. While the ships are exceptionally well preserved, they were also fragile. This makes it impossible to bring them to the surface intact. Scientists may carefully remove and study selected objects from their wreckage, but the sunken ships will remain protected where they are, perhaps among thousands of others, deep beneath us, suspended in time, at the bottom of the Black Sea.